What it is that I'll tell you, when it comes to military people and gangsters, there's a similarity. The similarities between military people and gangsters is that they have this idea of an honor culture in terms of keeping things into a certain secrecy. What you have out of Tim Kennedy is a guy who is braggadocious, a guy who is a flamboyant showman. And by the way, that helps a lot in your MMA career. And it's actually a great contributor to how he was able to market himself. Believe it or not, there's a lot of special forces guys that fight in MMA, but they just don't know how to market themselves in a way that Tim Kennedy does. And that right there remains to be a factor of why Tim Kennedy is not only marketable, but also has the high susceptibility to lie.
All of it has denied, lied, told us to go fuck ourselves, called us grifters, said we were Democrat hitmen. Man, a lot of things that, you know, when you finally see the guy has to admit after he's caught so red-handed that, yeah, it pissed me off. But again, I've had some time to reflect on it, calm down a little bit, and a lot of you are going to be disappointed to hear what I got to say, but I am officially cashing out of the Tim Kennedy stolen valor saga.
I got to tell you, gangs in the military are really not that different. Now, of course, one is a lot more prestige in the eyes of society over the other, and the other one, well, the society sort of fears and wants to ignore the realities of it. But either way, understand this, both the military and gangs have a structure that deals with organization, that deals with ranking, that deals with having to listen to somebody that is of a higher rank than you, and then given orders and this and that and the other. And then there's also a thing called DP, which is a disciplinary factor in the gang world, just as you have the UCMJ and military courts and JAG and all of these things, right? They're all very much the same in that light, except one is more organized than the other. Of course, there's the other factor of gangs in the military as well, right? I urge you to take a look at the book right here, Carter F. Smith, Gangsters, Bikers, and Terrorists with Military Training, right? Very interesting stuff since we're talking about Tim Kennedy here for this particular video. So obviously, gang members joining the military is not that uncommon, although it is something that is vastly ignored. And there are several reasons as to why. Before we get into the Tim Kennedy video, I'd like to show you this right here.
Here to our TikTok shop, Convict Clothing, y'all. Yes, some gangs do send their members through the military to be able to get combat training. It's the same exact concept as to why gangs try to recruit veterans so hard as soon as they hit a prison yard. I mean, let's face it, that's a high-value homeboy right there. And you have to understand that some of these gangs, they're generational. Like their dad, maybe even their grandfather was involved in this gang. So they'll send them when they're young. They'll be like, yo, first off, this is who you are. You're a part of this gang. This is part of our family identity. And we're going to send you so that you can go get training and come back and be more value to the organization. And then sometimes while they're in there, they'll be recruiting other people for that gang and letting them know, hey, when we get back, man, when we get out of here, if you want to make a lot more money, I can get you laced up, homeboy. That's part of why a lot of gangs see the value in not making their members get the tattoos signifying that they're a part of that gang. Because if you have those tattoos, the military, they're not going to let you in. Also, the red hat.
All right. Well, a big shout out to Valhalla podcast, because obviously I got a lot of information on this particular matter with Tim Kennedy. And I got to tell you, right? Look, when I said that gangsters and military people are really not that different, what are some of the biggest arguments that you see in gangster podcasts involving, let's say, Whack 100, Brick Baby, No Jumper, all of these things, right? The battle is constantly about authenticity, realness, honesty, integrity, right? So in that way, you could say that, yes, there are some similarities in that particular regard, but at the same time, it's obviously different in how society views it, because obviously they see gangs as a threat to society, whereas they see the military as a force of good and a force of protecting one's country. And then the other side of that, people see it as just a way to perpetuate the military industrial complex. On any regard, this is all that I have to say on this particular topic. Let's get to the rest of this video and the rest of this monologue. Shout out to everybody that's tapping in right now up until this point. About the kicks and the punches of Tim Kennedy. And no, we're not here to talk about his matchups with Luke Rockhold, Jacare, not to mention Kelvin Gastelum, on top of Yoel Romero. One of the most controversial matchups that sort of led into sitting in his stool, pretending that he's tired, only to come back and finish Tim Kennedy off. Controversial. You want to know what else is controversial? The stolen valor story of Tim Kennedy right now. And I have a very interesting take on this matter in terms of the different ways that you can look at it. Well, for one, the first radical take that I've ever heard on this particular concept with Tim Kennedy and his stolen valor comes from Jesse on Fire. And he says, and I quote, "Guys, why do we need to go after this guy when we already know that he's a hero, and the exaggeration that he has made sort of still makes up for the other accomplishments that he's made in his military career, on top of his illustrious UFC career as well, right? Because at one point he was close to being a title challenger. On top of that, he has a win over Michael Bisping, where he just straight up out wrestles Michael Bisping for 5 rounds. At least that was 5 rounds from what I remember. But on any regard, Tim Kennedy is now facing scrutiny from the military community. And the reason why he is because he exaggerated about certain accolades that he had gained or lack of. You see, what a lot of people don't understand about accolades, right, is that it is very deceiving with a lot of people. Okay, it's very deceiving. You see, for example, you're looking in the background right now, there's a WWE belt, and on top of that, there's an action figure, and then there's a Captain America pouch. On any regard, you think that this is just nothing but a world of fiction. Obviously, a WWE belt comes from a world of fiction. But if you don't notice, I have a Taekwondo belt that ranges back from 1997, as far back as 12 years old, winning it in a tournament inside a high school gym, very similar to what you see in the Karate Kid scenes, except obviously Taekwondo emphasizes more on pads, headgear, so on and so forth, in that type of amateurish style of fighting, very similar to what they do in amateur boxing. Among other things, obviously, you know, a Muay Thai trophy and this and that. But on any regards, look, it's deceiving. Trophies from each person to another are very deceiving, right? For example, they talk about Andrew Tate having these world titles in kickboxing, but are they really, or are they just, let's say, a similarity to getting a British championship or NABA championship, right? A North American Boxing Association championship to that degree. But one thing remains, okay, is that Tim Kennedy, for sure, in many people's eyes in the military, has exaggerated his career, has exaggerated his stories. Now, has Tim Kennedy been into a lot of real things and a lot of real situations? Of course, he has. The thing is, what about the exaggerations that he talked about? Could you forgive those? Or is there a sector that says, well, you know what? He's just lying completely, so he is completely dishonored to every degree. And I got to be honest with you, a part of me sort of leans that way as much as I'm trying to be very objective about this particular matter, right? Like, you already have an illustrious military career. There's not a lot of people that could say they're Green Beret. If you really want to talk stolen valor, they have these videos with these guys that pretend they were Navy SEALs, right? And then get caught by real Navy SEALs and exposed as a phony, right? But Tim Kennedy, you can't do that to, because obviously he's a real Green Beret. He's actually served. On top of that, he had a pretty illustrious UFC career and some pretty good matchups, right? But then again, as I said, this video is not necessarily about the kicks and the punches and things of that nature. What it is that, I'll tell you, when it comes to military people and gangsters, there's a similarity. The similarities between military people and gangsters is that they have this idea of an honor culture in terms of keeping things into a certain secrecy. What you have out of Tim Kennedy is a guy who is braggadocious, a guy who is a flamboyant showman. And by the way, that helps a lot in your MMA career, and it's actually a great contributor to how he was able to market himself. Believe it or not, there's a lot of special forces guys that fight in MMA, but they just don't know how to market themselves in a way that Tim Kennedy does. And that right there remains to be a factor of why Tim Kennedy is not only marketable, but also has the high susceptibility to lie. Okay? You need to understand that. There is a high susceptibility of lying when you have that type of exaggeration or that sense of inflation about you. You got to remember, there were conversations that Tim Kennedy had with commanding officers, according to many of these military podcasters, right? And what these military podcasters said is that Tim Kennedy went after a commanding officer and said, "Do you know who I am?" So a guy like that, of course, is going to exaggerate and go all out with his personality, his stories, and not only that, also compromises integrity as a result of exaggerating one tale to another, all in the name of marketing himself to whatever image he wants to portray in whatever persona he wants to exhibit to the world. All right, well, that is all that I have for this one. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. I will see you in the next one, inshallah.
MMA needs, if you want to find predictions, news, and everything that deals with MMA, shout outs to Kyrie Abu El-Kheer MMA, Sacramento, California, represent.
That's right, Kyrie. I appreciate you, my nigga. You came in here, you was talking that shit. That's right, bro. Much love, Flo. I appreciate you for always stepping in, bro. Be safe out there. Man, my nigga Kyrie, my man Kyrie came through. He started talking that shit. Hey, here's the thing. Here's the thing. That nigga will whoop your fucking ass. You will think that nigga's all squared up and all that type of shit. Nigga come through and beat your fucking ass. Like, man, fuck you up. You will never see it coming. So for those of y'all